Yeah. And so this is kind of a little bit stepping back to the kind of fundamentals of retirement, but what are kind of like the basic factors that you, or like inputs that you for figuring out retirement?
Yeah, okay. So, on a very basic level, one of the most powerful ways to look at retirement planning is just, kind of imagining this big asset base that you've got in your retirement, either now because you're retired or you want to have, if you're not retired. And then what I look at is kind of what are the inputs? What's coming in? I call it from the top. So Social Security would be a great example, or rental income that might be coming in, or pensions, or any of those things. So those are all inputs on the top. And then what are you pulling out the bottom? Travel and this, basic living expenses and medical costs and all those. So the whole financial planning is that inputs, assets, outputs, right? That's it. And the planning process is just to determine whether there's a balance there. Is that do those three pieces work? Are there enough assets? Are there too much withdrawal? Is there not enough inputs that are coming in? Or how do we maximize these? And the planning process is just that: inputs, assets, withdrawals. Now, there are other aspects to that that are kind of interesting, and that has to do with really just the number of years. So, if you're not retired yet, how long do you have to put money in? So, that's an aspect that we can actually change. Somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, we want to retire at 50," and it doesn't work. I can't get it to balance for what their parameters are, but maybe it works at 55. So, that's another aspect of like flexibility potentially, as far as that goes. Or we leave it at 50 and they try to stay more motivated to save more. There's some different things because you either have to save more or move the time off to make some of these work as far as that goes. So, somebody who is, in their 20s that wants to retire in their, say, early 50s, one of the challenges there, they're going to have less years to save, right? There's no doubt. And then they're going to have more years that they're going to be withdrawing. So if you live into your 90s, you're retired early. Those are the challenges that have to be met by that. So that person has to be very, very motivated to save a lot of money to make that work, and to possibly even make sure that their standard of living after retirement is reasonable. So it's not so hard to accomplish. But yeah, those are some of the big parameters: just inputs, assets, outputs, number of years you can save, and then what age you retire, for example. Those are some of the big ones.
Yeah. And so like the basic factors that we can kind of change around is, can we move your savings up? Can we lower your expenses? Or can we maybe give you a longer time horizon to,
Yep.
if you're at the kind of edge? Those are really kind of the inputs that we change and try and help you decide on.
Yeah, I would say that there's a couple others, and some of them are more important than others. But maximizing Social Security is interesting. It'll add a couple percent to the probability of success if you do that correctly. So that's one piece. The other part is if somebody's really, really interested in retiring at a certain age and it's really not working, and they have some equity in their home and they're willing to move, you know, putting that in there. Hey, we're going to move, and this is how much money is going to be captured out of that move. But what you're doing there is you're adding in assets that wouldn't be counted otherwise, because most of our clients say we're not going to move. So that house is worth a lot here in the valley, but essentially, if you're not going to move, then it's just a place to live. But if you are going to move, you go to Arizona or something, you might capture a bunch of money that then just increases that asset base that you can withdraw from. So those are a couple of other things that can be looked at to see, uh, again, in a scenario that is a tight scenario or doesn't quite work without a little bit of maneuvering and thought. But those are the basics. I think it's really important to understand the basics of retirement planning. Just makes the conversation with your planner a lot more productive. The more you can understand the basics of how it works, the more that you have a chance of having a successful retirement. I think planning is a really critical part of this. It's something that we lean on pretty heavily.